Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a story that is absolutely fascinating and, honestly, just completely mind-boggling. We are talking about a man who lied, cheated, and outright scammed America out of hundreds of millions of dollars. But here's the crazy hook. He served just mere months in jail and then turned right around and got rich all over again doing the exact same thing, selling. And the absolute wildest part of the whole shebang? People still cheer for him.
Okay, let's dive into this. 22. That is the shockingly brief number of months Jordan Belfort actually spent in a minimum security prison. Think about that. 22 months for orchestrating a massive, sprawling financial fraud that literally ruined countless lives, completely drained life savings, and shattered families.
There's just this massive disconnect in how we view the story as a culture. On one hand, we've got this glamorous Hollywood blockbuster, Leonardo DiCaprio, the mega yachts, the wild parties, and just pure pop culture idolization. But then, on the other hand, you have the stark, devastating reality of it all. Shattered retirements, broken homes, and working-class victims who lost literally everything they had. And the overarching theme that bridges this crazy gap? It's simply the art of selling.
Section 1. The birth of a salesman. Now, to understand how he pulled this off, we have to look at his roots. We're starting back in 1962 in Bayside, Queens. It was a modest, working-class Jewish neighborhood where most people had, pretty practical dreams. But young Jordan Belfort, his ambition had absolutely no ceiling. His hustle started really early. At just 16 years old, he spent his summer slinging Italian ices at the beach and ended up walking away with 20 grand. I mean, most kids would go buy a car, right? Jordan took that money and enrolled in dental school. But, well, that didn't last. After dropping out, he launched this door-to-door meat and seafood business. It was incredibly scrappy. He was hustling, literally melting steaks in the backseat of his car. But somehow, he hit $100,000 a month in sales before the late deliveries and unpaid invoices ultimately bankrupted the whole operation.
Actually, that brief stint in dental school is absolutely vital to understanding him, all because of a quote from the dean on Jordan's very first day. The dean stood up and said, "If you're here to get rich, you're in the wrong profession." And Jordan, he just stood right up, nodded, and walked right out the door. He realized in that exact moment that he didn't want to provide a service. He just wanted a massive payout.
Standing there in the absolute wreckage of his bankrupt frozen meat business, Jordan had this crucial epiphany. The stakes, they didn't matter. Surfboards wouldn't matter. Stocks wouldn't matter. The product itself was completely irrelevant. His true superpower was the art of the sale itself. He realized that if you could speak, if you could persuade, you could sell absolutely anything to anyone.
Section 2. The penny stock pivot. Entering Wall Street. So Jordan lands a gig at LF Rothschild. This was the 1980s, so suddenly he is surrounded by high-pressure quotas, sharp suits, and, cocaine in the bathroom stalls. It was his very first real taste of that incredible Wall Street money and intense Wall Street greed.
But then came October 1987, Black Monday. The market totally crashed and Jordan got fired. But instead of throwing in the towel, he stumbled upon this dark, highly lucrative corner of the financial world, penny stocks. Compared to the legit Wall Street firms, this was unregulated pink sheet garbage that no serious broker would ever touch. But it had a magic number attached to it. 50% commissions. The exact same pitch he used over at Rothschild was now yielding him 10 times the reward.
And this brilliantly illustrates his aggressive approach. Picture this, you pick up the phone in Nebraska, and the guy on the other end is just talking a mile a minute. He's telling you this tiny company is a pre-IPO, ground floor opportunity, totally under the radar, and he's promising a 10x return minimum. And when you hesitate even for a second, he hits you with this. You don't have to understand the company, sir. You just have to understand the upside. It was pure, manufactured adrenaline. Section 3. Inside the boiler room. By 1989, Jordan wasn't just making cold calls anymore. He was building a kingdom. He teamed up with a fast-talking misfit named Danny Porush. Jordan brought the grand vision, Danny brought the pure, unadulterated chaos, and together they built a highly dangerous financial empire. They named it Stratton Oakmont. Now that name alone sounds like it has a 100-year legacy, right? You picture mahogany desks and rich leather-bound books. But the deep irony is that the reality was a dingy strip mall boiler room with flickering lights. The early recruits, they weren't financial analysts. They were local bartenders, neighborhood hustlers, and college dropouts. Jordan didn't want thinkers, he wanted hungry closers.
So, to turn these stammering rookies into million-dollar closing machines, Jordan created a system he called straight-line persuasion. This was a psychological pressure cooker. It was specifically designed to just bulldoze a client's hesitation, completely drown out any logical doubt, and guide them from the word hello directly to writing a check, all in one single, unbroken, highly aggressive conversational line.
And the culture on the floor? It completely reflected that aggression. It was a blur. Screaming phones, blasting air horns, pure testosterone. They wore $2,000 suits and flashed gold Rolexes. The whole thing was completely fueled by rampant narcotics, cocaine to speed them up, quaaludes to bring them down. Top performers were treated like absolute royalty, while the underperformers were publicly humiliated and cut loose in hours. Strippers in the conference room, champagne poured directly into fax machines. Jordan wasn't just a boss anymore. He had become a cult leader in an Armani suit.
Section 4. The pump and dump. Now, to afford this massive carnival of excess, they relied on a very specific financial crime.
It was known as the pump and dump, and it worked in 4 pretty systematic steps. Step 1. Find the forgotten everyday investors. Step 2. Stratton buys up massive blocks of obscure, practically worthless shares. These are companies with names like BZZ or Eugene that barely even existed. Step 3. The boiler room unleashes a flood of aggressive cold calls, manufacturing totally fake excitement to artificially pump or spike the stock price. And finally, Step 4. Jordan and his insiders dump all their shares at the absolute peak, cashing out millions while the stock just plummets to zero.
So the crucial point is, who was actually left holding the bag? Because it wasn't wealthy hedge funds. The victims were working-class retirees, they were war veterans, they were desperate parents just looking for a little bit of hope. The exact people that Wall Street historically ignored, Stratton deliberately exploited, and left with nothing.
Section 5. The inevitable collapse. But, a frenzy like this, it can only last so long. Eventually, the smoke and mirrors had to clear. The collapse of Stratton Oakmont was completely inevitable.
The warning signs were literally everywhere. The SEC started flagging their suspicious filings. Complaints were pouring in from terrified investors who watched their $7 stocks crash to 30 cents overnight. To hide the money, Jordan's paranoia just skyrocketed. He used offshore shell companies, funneled cash to an aunt in the UK, and even had a housekeeper smuggle cash literally stuffed inside her bra on a flight to Geneva. Inside the office, brokers were passing out on calls or having seizures from the rampant drug abuse, and an FBI agent named Gregory Coleman had finally caught the scent and started quietly pulling their wire records.
By 1996, the walls were rapidly closing in. In June, in a fit of sheer drug-fueled arrogance, Jordan ordered his massive yacht, the Naomi, to sail right into a terrifying storm in the Tyrrhenian Sea. The boat sank, though luckily everyone was rescued. By October, the FBI officially raided Stratton Oakmont, literally ripping phones right off the desks. But the fatal mistake came in early 1997. Against explicit legal orders, Jordan wired $2 million to Switzerland. The feds traced it immediately. By late 1998, Jordan Belfort was staring down 30 years in federal prison for fraud and money laundering.
Section 6. Profiting from the crimes. Now, staring down decades behind bars, Jordan used his ultimate superpower, his ability to sell, one last time to save his own skin.
He didn't just quietly accept justice. Oh no, he negotiated it. He sold it. He immediately flipped on his own people. He fully cooperated with the FBI, strapped on a wire, and handed over more than 30 of his own employees, friends and business partners who had completely idolized him and learned his playbook.
And because he sold them all out, Jordan got a sweetheart deal. Like we said, he spent just 22 months in a minimum security facility where he spent his days playing tennis and lifting weights. Ironically, he met the comedian Tommy Chong in prison, who heard all these wild stories and convinced Jordan, hey, you gotta write these down. The result? A massive hit memoir published in 2007 with absolutely zero apologies, which was then turned into a huge 2013 global blockbuster movie by Martin Scorsese. The lies literally became a lifestyle that Hollywood and the public just eagerly consumed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this massive figure. $110 million. That is the massive amount of court-ordered restitution Jordan was supposed to pay back to the victims whose lives he completely ruined. And to this day, only a tiny fraction of that has ever actually been paid. The rest just vanished into legal loopholes and offshore trusts, all while Jordan tours the world right now as a highly paid motivational speaker and sales coach.
Which leaves us with a deeply uncomfortable question, doesn't it? Why do we reward the very greed we claim to condemn? We point our fingers at the boiler rooms and the scams, but then we go and buy the books, We watch the movies, and we applaud the sheer audacity of it all. Jordan Belfort turned fraud into fame simply because he knew how to sell us exactly what we wanted. And maybe, just maybe, the real reason he got away with it all is because deep down, a part of society secretly wants to be the wolf. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you guys next time.